Let me ask you something. What is the first thing you did today when you woke up in the morning? Chances are you used water, right? We cannot imagine life without water. I will be speaking about life without water, the secret life of insects without water. As my science fantasy, I always think of adventures on other planets with water that could support life. I'm sure we understand the importance of water in our lives. Yet, unfortunately, people in some parts of the world face water crisis, sometimes severe water crisis. They may get water supply just once a week, or may have to walk miles or hours together to just grab a few liters of water. Global warming, specifically temperature humidity imbalance in nature, is one of the reasons for water scarcity, water shortage, and that results in drought stress or dry environmental conditions. And let's see now why insects could be helpful in tracking the effects of such climate change related conditions. So, first of all, why insects? We all know insects occupy almost all ecological habitats on Earth, may it be land, water, air, trees, forests, the Antarctic or the Arctic regions, deserts. You name it, and you would have at least one type of insect over there. So because they are everywhere and they get to experience different kinds of climate conditions, they can be useful animals to track the effects of environmental changes. They can also help scientists understand the possible changes that could take place in our body to overcome such challenges of dehydration stress. Insects could also experience dehydration stress or drought stress, especially during very severe hot and dry conditions, summer months, right? Well, first let's imagine what would happen to us. Let's say you go hiking on a sunny day, or you take a long walk in the sun without water. How would you feel? Just imagine. Exhausted, right? Your mouth would dry up, you would lose body water through sweat, you may faint. There could be other serious consequences too. You might expect a similar situation in insects. We could expect them to lose body water, dry out, and die. But that's not true. Some insects have a special ability to dry out when the environment around them is dry, but they do not die. They can come back to life once they get water again. Sounds unrealistic? Some kind of science fiction? But this ability is very special to some insects that can tolerate dry conditions. And this ability to survive in the dry without compromising on coming back to life when water is available again is called desiccation tolerance. So essentially, desiccation tolerance is life without water. Interesting, isn't it? Well, most of you might say that you've got introduced to this term for the first time. I challenge you if you've not. You already know this phenomenon, just that you did not know you knew it. Okay, let me give you a quick demo, okay? So these are dried lentil seeds. They appear dead, they appear lifeless, right? You don't think they'll be of any use to you. Perfect. Now, what would happen if we add water to this, right? I already did that the night before for our small demo. So I added water to the lentil seeds. And now let's look at them. Let's see what happens. Can you see? They've turned squishy. They've absorbed water, right? All messy, right? Look, they took water. They now look full of life, right? And when I bury them into the soil, they will be ready to germinate. Exciting? Maybe not so much. We take it for granted that this is the ability of plant seeds. We've been knowing this since ages, right? Plant seeds are indeed desiccation tolerant. When you add water to them, they are able to give rise to a whole new plant. What's that? Desiccation tolerance, right? And that's why I said, I bet that you know this phenomenon, just that you didn't know that this is desiccation tolerance. Now, similarly, let me show you a small video. This is about an insect, my research model, my insect, which I use for my studies to understand the consequences of desiccation tolerance in animal systems. This insect is called the bloodworm or the midge, and it is able to tolerate dry conditions and is still able to come back to life when every time I rehydrate it with water. Okay, and this is the only insect in the animal kingdom, among insects, sorry, this is the only insect that has hemoglobin similar to us. The respiratory pigment in this insect is also hemoglobin. Of course, there are differences compared to the well-developed human hemoglobin, but yes, that is the respiratory pigment. So this is the animal in the hydrated state. This is the animal in the desiccated state. When you've sucked out all the body water, it's looking lifeless, dead, right? But the beauty of the physiology of desiccation tolerant animals or plants is that when rehydrated, they are able to come back to life, okay? And this is my research model, the bloodworm or the chironomid midge. And these are the housing tubes or housing nests of these bloodworms in which they go and take shelter, and thus they protect themselves from various environmental stresses, including dehydration. Now, in case the larva is not able to protect itself from dehydration, then it's okay. It allows the body to lose water gradually, and then it looks lifeless. It looks this dry, shrunken totally. This is almost 80 to 85% of body water loss. And you would also notice how dry the housing tubes have become, right? But let's see in the video this amazing ability of coming back to life once water is given, okay? So initially, I'm going to show the larva in its normal happy state. And then I'm going to try it and then rehydrate it, okay? Let's take a look. So this is the normal larva. And now look, the larva is subjected to desiccation stress. So I'm sucking out water. I've kept it in a chamber that allows water loss. The larva is looking shrunken. It's looking lifeless. It's looking dead. But now I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to add water to it and then see the magic. Okay, so just notice I've just added water. Within a few minutes, it will start imbibing water. It will start, kind of giving the jerk. Look, it's almost uncoiled. You see the change in the body? And look, you have it now happily swimming again. Awesome, right? That's amazing. I'm so fascinated with these insects. They're superb. You may have seen something similar with the winter sleep of frogs. They hibernate, and once normal conditions come back, they are back in action. Bloodworms too are cheating death, right? They appear dead, but they are not. So what is their secret of drying out without dying? Let's talk about that. Now, before even I go ahead and tell you their first secret, let me give you a small analogy. Let's say you are with your group of friends and it's freezing cold outside, and you don't have any protective covering. What would you do to help yourself? Come on, feel free to pour in your thoughts in the chat window. What do you think would happen? Or how do you think would you help to protect yourself? You would shiver, true. You would huddle together, absolutely, bang on. Penguins do the same thing as well. How do they protect themselves from the harsh winters? You've seen how in what inhospitable conditions they survive, right? They huddle together, they form groups, right? That saves them a bit from getting exposed to the harsh conditions. In the same way, many insects use this behavioral strategy to form aggregates, or they clump together to reduce the amount of the water they could lose from their body. For example, my research has also shown that the larvae of the bloodworm are able to come together. They form a tiny ball when they come together, and that protects the larvae from drying up too easily. Even cockroaches, for that matter, show similar behavior to control the rate at which they can lose water. Awesome. Another interesting example of a behavioral trick to protect from water loss, and that is fog basking in beetles. So beetles take up a particular posture, okay, by which fog water gets collected in their mouth. They drink up this water, and that's how they manage to keep themselves safe from excessive drying conditions in nature. Some insects even build shelters that keeps them safe from water loss. These include nests of termites and bloodworms. Now, apart from these behavioral strategies, insects can also bring about a few biochemical adjustments in their body. One way is to increase the production of some special useful molecules in the body. For example, there's a sugar called trehalose. It's a very well-known example that protects insects as well as other desiccation-tolerant plants and animals from the challenges of drying up. This sugar trehalose contains 2 units of glucose. So we call it as a disaccharide, 2 glucose units, so a disaccharide. Okay, and some unique properties of the sugar, such as forming a layer, protective layer around cells and other molecules, make it a very useful material to work in dry conditions to protect the structure of cells. So these were just a few examples that show how insects play a useful role in broadening our understanding of the effects of global warming and dehydration. Now you would ask me, fine, insects are doing this. So what do we do with that? Any thoughts of how this knowledge could be applied somewhere in some context? Humans are too selfish, right? All the research they do is with the intention to try and use it for human welfare. So is there some way we could make use of this knowledge and try and do something about it? How can we use it? Any thoughts? All right. Let me tell you one very interesting example. Such information from insects could be applied to the biomedical field for human welfare. For instance, recent research suggests that we can now preserve organs for transplantation like eyes and life-saving fluids like blood at normal room temperatures in a mixture containing the sugar trehalose without the need of any sophisticated cold storage setup or any specialized expertise. And who knows, with anticipated technology in the future, when we can make changes in our DNA, someday we humans could also turn out desiccation or drought tolerant. Then water crisis, water shortage, drought stress, dehydration stress wouldn't really matter to our body. Sounds awesome, right? So the next time you see an insect, you know it cannot be ignored. They are very valuable research models. And today was just one small example I shared with you from my own research of how they could be useful to understand the effects of environmental changes, such as dehydration or drought stress. I could go on and on, but please feel free to get in touch with me if you're curious to know more. Thank you, folks. That's an interesting question, very interesting. And let me tell you, Fernanda, there are some insects that can survive in the dry state for up to 17 years. So you dry them and you just put them in a box, just keep them away. After 17 years, if you take them out, just add water to them, they're able to recover, they're able to revive again. Apart from this, some animals, some insects, so to speak, also have the ability to dehydrate and rehydrate several times. Let me tell you about my research model. So the bloodworm can be exposed to this dehydration, rehydration cycle for as long as it is in the larval state. Okay, so throughout its larval duration in the life cycle, it can be dehydrated and rehydrated n number of times. There's no limit to it. But this may not be true for all animals, of course. Each species has its own specific ability, right? But yes, for this insect, it could be n number of times. Yes, of course, there are non-insect models of desiccation tolerance, for example, the tardigrades or the water bears. They're another very interesting example of strong desiccation tolerant animals. Okay, so that's one example that comes to my mind. Apart from insects, we have the nematode worms, C. elegans, for example. C. elegans is a nematode worm or a roundworm that is extensively used for research, and that is desiccation tolerant as well. Okay, wonderful. I always love to answer this question. Bloodworms, as you rightly said, are not a very popular animal model for research, right? You hear about the fruit fly, you hear about mice used for research, but not bloodworms. When I started off as a master's student, I undertook a research practicum. And for my research practicum, I had to work on the bloodworms. That was the first time I got introduced to this model system. And I was really amazed first with the red color of the worm. And the second thing that caught my attention, and that's how I decided to do my PhD on this bloodworm, on their desiccation tolerances, I vividly remember. And I was on Easter break. And when I came back, I saw that the culture trays carrying these insects had totally dried up. And I was just trying to discard that. I just added a little water to wash them off. And lo and behold, what happened? Within 10 minutes, the larvae started, moving. They started wriggling inside their housing nests. And I was so amazed. I just thought that it was so dry. It was lifeless. And look, they've come back to life. And that time I totally did not know about this desiccation tolerance or any such interesting phenomena in the animal kingdom. And that's how I read a little bit more about it. And I got into this topic for my PhD. Thank you so much.